Hi everyone, my name is Fei Guo. I'm a fourth year PhD student in history at UT Austin. I'm really interested in economic history of People's Republic of China. That's me. So I'm gonna, nice to meet you, Dr. Chen.
Nice to meet you.
So I'm gonna introduce you first. Dr. Chen is currently professor of economics at the National School of Development at Peking University and senior research fellow at Center for New Political Economy at Fudan University. He received his PhD in physics at UT Austin at 1987, supervised by Ilya Prigogine. Dr. Chen is a pioneer in studying economic chaos and economic complexity since he shifted his interest from physics to economics. Amid the Chinese Cultural Revolution in 1987, he found empirical and theoretical evidence of economic chaos from monetary indexes, and in 1994, evidence of persistent cycles from macro and stock indexes. He also discovered weak evidence of micro foundation of macro fluctuations based on the principle of large numbers in 2002, and has proposed a new trinity of micro, meso, macroeconomic in economic analysis. His book, Economic Complexity and Equilibrium Illusion, Essays on Market Instability and Macro Vitality, published by Ron Luge in 2010, developed a new perspective of complex evolutionary economics. He has been actively involved in China's reform policy since 1978. So without further ado, let's give the podium to Dr. Chen.
I should mention, I also former student of War Rostock. He's in my PhD dissertation committee. And the surprising result is that, you know, he has intensive debate with Robert Solow on economic history theory. So his book is Stages of Economic Growth. Actually is a nonlinear stages, you know, of the series. And
wow.
When he was taught in MIT, you know, he was a former national security advisor to President Johnson and chair of a foreign policy committee with President Kennedy. So there was a debate before he went to the White House. And Solow criticized Rostow's theory has no mathematical model. Okay. And at that time, Rostow defends, say, history is so complicated. How can you describe by mathematics? Then after he understand my theory of economic chaos, then he was so excited because he was the first nonlinear model in economic theory. So that's why I put his theory of economic stages. Actually, his theory is a challenge Karl Marx. You know, his subtitle is called Non-Communist Manifesto, right? Karl Marx has stages of history, such as feudalism and capitalism and socialism and communism. And War also say, oh, he has a different scenario. It's called takeoff and maturity. And right now we have age of mass consumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say a current problem in the Western society is actually the trouble of the high mass consumption. What's the next stage? Okay. So I would say for my lecture, I will answer the question from a larger theoretical perspective. My question is, what's the origin of the institution, right? Or what's the origin of the state? And there are two. So right now we have a debate about the coronavirus, right? You can see, you can compare different governance systems. And some people say, oh, on one side is a Western democracy, they call rule-based society. And the other side, people will criticize, say, oh, you are authoritarian regime, and and you don't have rule of law. And I will change it to another perspective because I'm doing economic evolution based on mathematical models. So actually there are two competing paradigms, right? One we will call Newtonian paradigm, which is a deterministic, and say if the dynamic is a deterministic, then we have an optimal solution. Then we have a universal approach. That we call universal value, right? That's actually it's a Newtonian approach. The interesting thing is competing approach both originated in Great Britain. That's very interesting. So I have a lot of friends in UK because I say I like two pioneers. As a physicist, certainly I like Newton. But as a chaos theory, I like Darwinian theory, right? Because Darwinian theory is based on biological evolution. And biological evolution is characterized, your direction is not convergence, but diversity, right? We see more and more diversified world in the biological world. So nobody will claim there is an optimal species in the universe. Then we're dominating the universe and wipe out all other species. That's crazy. That's impossible, right? So I would say current approach to dealing with coronavirus actually is a two approach in philosophical thinking. And Western society is very advanced in modernization approach, started from 15th century to now. What do you mean? Because that's a success of physics, chemistry, right? But not biology, not biology. So I would say Chinese civilization is mainly based on peasant society. So their philosophy is based on biological thinking. Biological thinking is mainly say we have to adapt to our natural environments. So that's a difference you can see. Asia, not just Chinese, Asia and to some degree Middle East culture more or less is close to biological thinking. So let me give you an example. Because the three monotheism religion all originated from Middle East. That's a very interesting thing, right? And what's the feature of Middle East? I would say the most strong culture is ancient Egypt. The Nile River is very stable. So every season, when the flood is coming, while the dry season is very, very stable. So if you see Egyptian mythology, their philosophy is very much regulated. Okay, so Egypt thinking have a strong impact to Greek thinking than to the Western thinking. However, if you compare the Yellow River with Nile River, what's the difference? Yellow River, you have a frequent natural disaster. Sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's flood. Okay, so if you read the Bible, and I was surprised, in the ancient time, all civilizations face the challenge of flood, right? But for Western civilization, how to dealing with the flood? Well, God will save you. You're waiting for miracle, okay? But for Chinese mythology, they're only looking for great leader. They call Da Yu. Actually, is the earliest king. Actually, he is not king, just a leader, just like Moses. But they have no way to escape from Egypt. So what's the Da Yu solution? He said, we have to build hydraulic projects. Either you can build a dam or you can dig a canal to let the water come to other space. Then Yu succeeded, but his father failed. So Yu became the first generation of Chinese king. So in this sense, China has no emperor, but China always seeking for greater leader. The greater leader is not religious prophets, but he can provide a solution to dealing with current crisis. So that's I characterize what's the Chinese civilization. Chinese civilization is basically greater teacher become a great leader. Then greater leader should provide solution to dealing with the current challenges or crisis. So in this way, I would say a Western society, you can say it's a rule-based society and emphasize on procedural justice. How can you do that? Because if you have a Norman develop into commerce, you do business, you like a stable procedure, right? If every time we bargaining, you change the rule of game, how can we set the price? So that's a crazy. But for Chinese society, it's not a commerce society. It's a peasant society. Okay. So if we have a peaceful time, okay, we just let your neighbor, solve your own problem by senior, village leaders or some senior officials. For what purpose? To minimize the tax burden, because Chinese empire is very large. However, their tax ability is very weak. So China was a collective sense of a minimized government because China has no tax revenue. Their tax is mainly based on land tax or population tax. The tax collection is very difficult to do that. So China is a typical society of so-called neoclassical, minimal government, laissez-faire, okay? However, this society cannot resist foreign invasion, such as the British gunpowder. You cannot defend them. So China had big trouble after 19th century so-called Opium War in 1840s. From that time, China society has a dramatic change. So several competing schools competing for power. So China actually experiment all kinds of Western developments. First, their teacher was British. Then the second teacher was Japanese. Third one was Soviet Union, Russia. Okay. Fourth teacher was American. So China have to change their strategy radically. For what purpose? I would say for their goal. So if you say Western society is a rule-based society, I would say China society is a goal-oriented society. So what's the goal? If without foreign invasion, their goal is just peaceful coexistence among farmers, among peasants. Okay, you cannot let some landlord become huge. Then a lot of peasants lost their farmland and they will rebel. Okay, they will turn over the dynasty. So China's society, you can see, is a periodically redistribution of the land. That's their secret to maintain stability of Chinese stability in a unified country. If the dynasty or the emperor has no stomach to suppress the feudal landlord, then you have a land concentration to some big families, then the whole country will be split. We have civil war. So that's very simple. However, if there are foreign invasions, such as the Normans from the north side, Mongolian, you know that, or British, Japanese from the sea, then Chinese region will quickly unite it. In what sense? Not in the sense of a Western idea of a rule of law. In a sense of, say, East and the West Coast have to contribute in different aspects. For example, everybody know Southeast China is rich, right? So they should provide more tax revenue and more grain to support the army. And where the region is poor? Northwest region is poor. However, poor region will provide tough army because poor people can fight, rich people cannot fight. That's a very simple reason. So that's you can see why Pakistan has a problem. Their problem is similar to China. The coastal region, they are rich, pro the business, but the inland region, they are poor, so they have militant troops. Okay, so they have constant internal fighting. And how China solved this problem? I will tell you the secret, very simple. Because China is a centralized state, the main officers are through exam system. So China has a system outsiders rarely know that. They have a rotating system between coastal rich region and the inland poor region. You understand? For example, the Chongqing's former mayor, okay, Chongqing was a very poor area, the mountain area, okay? But they developed very quick. They developed so-called Belt and Road strategy. How can they do that? Because Chongqing mayor was formerly a Shanghai financial leader. Okay, so he knows how to do the business with foreign companies. But now you put him the position shift from Shanghai to inland. What he should do? He had to create a business for inland area. So what's his idea? He just built up a new human network in the inland area and ask the coastal businessmen to do business in inland China. Also, he asked Intel and Taiwan businessmen to move their PC industry, computer chips industry to inland area, then to create an industrial cluster. So they can compete with Western companies because American companies scattered in East and the Western coast, right? So that's why Apple Computer will do business with China because China's industrial cluster is highly concentrated either in Shenzhen, Southeast China, or in the emerging Chongqing area, So that's China's secrets of a development strategy. You understand? So I would say people used to think, oh, China is just another Soviet Union. That's wrong. China is not just a Soviet Union. China is a combination. You can see they have every element from their competitor. China has elements from Britain, from Japan, from Germany, from United States, and also preserve a large Chinese tradition. That's what? A lot of small farms. You have preserved their small land. So when these farmers go to big cities, if they can find job, that's fine. Okay, so China has hundreds of the millions of farmers go to the big cities to find jobs without internal turmoil. If this case is happen in India or let's say in Eastern Europe, you have big trouble, right? If you have hundreds of million people move to the Western cities, how can you adopt them? You will have racial conflicts, but that's not the case for China. Why? Because if these farmers lost a job in big cities, what can they do? They come back to their home country. They still have small land for them. They can survive, you know, the coronavirus much easier than, let's say, American workers. If American workers, especially I would say Latinos or African American, if they lost a job, what can they do? They have no land in their old villages. They have nothing. So they have count on government to pay their check. And I think the paycheck can only last 1 month. I think they can last 2 months, because I just received paycheck 2 days ago. The $24,000 for a couple, me and my wife, right? It's not enough to pay a rent for Los Angeles for even a 2-bedroom rent. How can you survive? But if I have a small land in China, I'm very happy. I go back to my villages. I grow vegetables. I don't need to worry about the grain. You know, the government provides the grain. I have no shortage of rice or wheat, right? I only need the vegetable and fruits and some meats. Everything is local provided. So that's, I would say, China's secret is a mixed economy. They don't need a heavy burden from a welfare system like Europe and the United States, because we have to count on a tax collect system. And if you collect income tax, I would say very cost and very inefficient. So I doubt any welfare system could last after this virus. You know, all the welfare system will collapse. However, I think a Chinese system can survive, because you should imagine more than half of the population, 700 million people, they don't count on welfare system. They only count on their village, you know, village collective owned land. And you have, I think every peasants in China, they have at least 2 houses. One house in their own village, they already quite large. No any city residents can have, because it's huge. Okay, they have a yard, they have their own land. Okay, then they have a second house in nearby county, or Chinese say 县, right? It's American is a small city. The small, but actually it's quite large. They may have more than, I would say, 10,000 people, or even hundreds of thousands of people. It's actually it's a small to medium-sized city in Texas. Some Texas city is very, very small. The minimum size of a Chinese city, I think Lindsay will know that, only have 100 people. 100 people. That's in China, only a small village. So then you can say American perception of China's so-called authoritarian system is a completely misunderstanding. Because any Chinese leader, no matter you are president, or you are provincial governor, or you are mayor, if you are in your position, you only have title, you have no power at all. Why? Because every Chinese citizen are so smart. They will look at you if you are a capable leader, or you just talk. If you can only have, empty talk, nobody obey your order. Even your driver, even your secretary, they just laughing at you. Nobody follow your order. Okay. However, if you are a strong leader, not just talking, you say, okay, for this case, pretty much like New York Governor Cuomo, I would say. He said, okay, we should do this, we can do that. And people agree, say, okay, this is we should do. Then everybody follow you. So your authority is not your position, but your leadership, your personality, okay? And also if you, let's say you are a provincial governor or even you are president, if you make a bad move or your colleagues, deny or object your proposal, you will lose your leadership. Much more quick than, say, British Prime Minister. They have to have a new election. For China, no. Only one meeting of a political bureau, you will be ousted. That's a case in 1989, when the former party secretary, and he tried to, take advantage of the events and shift his burden to other people, and lets the trouble, become uncontrollable. Okay, very easy solution. The political bureau make a collective decision. You out of the power. Okay, you gone. Okay, so that's Chinese system. So I think for my answer is that right now we really have a competition between not just two systems. We have multiple systems. I would say Indian system certainly is different from Chinese system, right? Chinese system is different from Singapore, okay? Certainly different from Japan system. And even for Western system, you can see British is different from American. American is certainly different from Germany or Scandinavia system. So actually there's a competing system. So I would say, I would be very happy because I'm as a physicist, I was the first physicist to change the idea from a Newtonian paradigm to Darwinian paradigm. For what purpose? Try to understand biological evolution. Then I try to understand economic and the institutional evolution, right? So that's why I think I feel very surprising how a Strauss Center could find me, because you can see my plots. I have plots. There's a competing technology for this one. You can see if you have a green line, that's a technology without a competitor. So you have a logistic curve, right? Logistic curve means you always have a resource limits. So you cannot claim, human beings are greedy. No, you have limited life. You have a limited capacity. So you cannot be greedy. So what's the outcome? Outcome, if you have a new technology come to compete with you, then you can see the left side, the blue line, the logistic curve will decline, become a wavelength, right? So the whole human technology is, you can see the rise and the fall of technologies. Old technology will decline and new technology will rise. So that's my observation of current trade war. Okay, people will say, oh, current trade war is some group is a pro-globalization or anti-globalization. I say no. I would say President Trump represents old technology. So he will want to preserve the old technology, the sunset belts, such as Chicago area, right? You can see Americans' steel industry decline, traditional automobile industry decline. However, internet conduct rise in the West Coast, right? And also you have a new energy sector rise from Texas, right? So I would say for American politics, at least you have 3 competing industry to compete for dominating power. Who should in charge the trade policy? And President Trump represents the old sector, so he tried to use old power to preserve the old technology. So he liked trade war. But if you talk with California people, and my daughter working in California, she previously worked with Microsoft, then later worked with learning industry. They are very happy because China's market is developed very fast. My daughter in China worked with several multinational companies in Shanghai. Do you know what's their growth speed? If I tell them, my American friend, nobody can believe. When my daughter working in Shanghai for several companies, every company's annual growth rate is 30%. Now his company working in Los Angeles cooperated with Tencent to develop the software learning from a cell phone. You can learning, let's say Chinese or English or mathematics from your cell phone. Okay, so do you know what's their growth rate? Their growth rate is a monthly 30%. So they just crazy. They have no way to keep the pace. So if you say West Coast states want to preserve the old industry, join the trade war, I would say nobody will join you. Okay, so for Texas, they are divided. Okay, if you see the Republican, okay, they want to prevent the Latino immigrants to get into Texas, right? Because you may compete with American, especially for African American for jobs, right? However, if you want to export your oil and the natural gas, who is your best customer? It's also China. You have to compete with Saudi Arabia, compete with Russian to export your oil to China. So how can they maintain a trade war, right? So I would say this current events is a very interesting things. I would say I have no conclusion right now, but I will have one speculation. I would say the world will become more and more diversified, more, I would say, how to say, more inclusive, not exclusive competition. That's my conclusion. But I will reject one speculation because there is a fear in United States and the West to say, is China want to be a next power? I tell you no. Why? Because China has learned a great lesson from old empire. What's the lesson? The lesson is very simple. To maintain an empire is very costly. It's a money lost business. Nobody can make money. That's the same conclusion like President Trump. If China want to be a world police, China's growth will stop. Okay, and China's domestic opinion will be divided. The England people will protest. Why you should give the resource to foreign country not to develop England area, right? China will be like Pakistan. We're also like Iran. They will fight each other. Okay, so China, I tell the Trump's think tank, I say your speculation is wrong because China was very happy with whom? with American to be war police, because the British was smart. He asked the whole empire, the colony, pay heavy tax to Great Britain, so British people could have a very, very luxury life. But American is so generous. They pay other people, pay Germany, pay Japanese, and pay Asian tigers. So all these countries get a recovery, right? After World War II. And at whose cost? At American cost. You can, if you look at the GDP ratio of a world composition, American GDP peak in 1950s. 1950s, American GDP ratio continued to decline. Right now, smaller than China if you measure by PPP. And America had a persistent trade deficits since 1973. Nothing to do with China. Okay. Americans' financial accounts had a persistent deficits. You know when? Since 1985. Since Reagan era. Why? Because he wants to cut tax and launch Star Wars. So how can you, bridge the gap in your budgets? American issue a debt. Issue debt become American trouble. So because you issue the debts, you drive up interest rate. Then you drive up American dollar. Then you drive up American manufacture. So President Trump say China steal American job. I say no. That's President Reagan. Send out all this job to East Asia. First to Japan, Korea, then to Asian tiger, then to China. So the real trouble is Americans' financial policy. If you let financial sector to expand, to get rid of the manufacture, then American cannot solve your job problem, right? Very, very simple. And if you, let's say you launch a trade war, you only increase American price. You will immediately see inflation will goes up. If inflation goes up, American dollar will collapse. How can you issue a debt, right? How can you maintain your status as a #1 importers in the world? How can you import? You have nothing to export. You only can export the American dollar, American debts. So that's a poor game. You cannot continue. So my prediction is very simple. After this COVID crisis, I would say there's no single power in the world can dominate like a British Empire or American Empire. But there are always big three or big five. Big three, we know current big three is the United States, China, and the European Union. I don't know if the European Union can last long, but you still have Russia there, right? Russia is big, okay. And you have to remember there are also developing countries, they are very large, including India, Indonesia, Nigeria, right? And all these countries, they have a huge population. You cannot just say export the weapon to them, say like Ukraine, I send you American dollar, then send you American weapon. You can create a job in your country. That's impossible. Right? You have to create jobs for not just the developing countries. You have to create jobs for the Latinos and African American in large cities. So when I visit Los Angeles and San Francisco, I was surprised. Their high-tech industry is so developed, but you can see there are thousands, tens of thousands of homeless people living in Los Angeles. You should ask yourself, which job is easier? China to help the poor people in the remote area have to build a road, build an electrical network, or you just help the homeless people in your large cities? Which one is easier, right? So I think this time, I think is a very good opportunity for us, because in Chinese language, crisis has a double meaning. You always have a danger plus opportunity. And a lot of people in the West only see danger. I see opportunity. That's, I quote Lao Tzu's philosophy. You know, Chinese believe the natural religion. They call Wei or Dao. You know, the Wei gave birth to the unity, unity gives to duality, duality goes to everything. You have a lot of choice. Why you need a lot of choice? Because every country has different culture, different history, different endowments, right? So you have no universal recipe. Say, as long as you let people vote, then the problem can be solved. No, voting cannot solve the job problem, cannot solve the environment problem. You have to make people working together to face the problem, to solve the problem. Don't blame the problem to other people. You have to start from your condition and try to find more partners, not more enemies. That's my conclusion.
I have a few questions. If no one is asking, I think I can go first. I think for me, I'm a historian. A lot of economists are saying that right now saying that the China model, and also I heard that in China and outside China as well. So what do you think of the term China model? Do you think China's development, especially after the opening up policy, do you think China's experience can be qualified as a China model, or it's just another version of Asian developmental state, just like another version of Japan and Korea?
That's a good question. I think actually I was the first Chinese scholar turn from a China model to China path or China road. Why? Because China model still in changing, not settled down yet. But certainly I can answer your question. China model is different from, let's say, Asian model. And for Japan and Korea and Singapore, I will say their economy is a dependent economy. Okay, in what sense? Because they started from a light industry, right? Then export oriented, then accumulates foreign reserve, then they can climb to higher ladder of technology, such as a semiconductor and other things. However, Japan and Korea and Singapore, they have American military bases. So United States do not allow Japan, Korea, and Singapore to develop their independent high-tech and the defense industry, like Russian and China or France. Okay, so if you say any country, they have an independent economy, right now I can only say number one, United States, number two, China or Russia, number three, France, not even Britain, because Britain already gave up their nuclear weapon. Okay, so the European Union is very weak because Germany has not an independent military power. And I have one observation that only if you have independent military power, then you can have independent financial policy. So in that way, Japan has no way to have independent currency policy. So Japanese yuan have no way to challenge American dollar. And euro has a weak power. But in the future, I would say Chinese yuan will be more stronger than Japanese yuan or euro, because China's economy is self-independent. So they have all the sector, including light industry, heavy industry, military defense industry, have no relation with American technology. So President Trump misjudged China's power. He thought Chinese technology is steal from the United States. No, because I was used to working with the Chinese academy. China developed nuclear power and the missile technology completely independently, without any transport, let's say imports from Soviet Union or United States. In this way, I will predict China will have independent communication technology. Even American governments can impose sanctions to China. It's too late. China already gained independent science and technology as early as in 1970s. That's why China could return to United Nations. If without China's independent nuclear power, China right now is still a dependent economy without independent economic policy. So in this sense, I would say China model is not Eastern Asia model, but is an updated Asia model. And I exchanged this idea with old generation of Chinese scholars. I think Fei knows that, including Fairbank and Joseph Needham, Wal Rostow, and currently is Elizabeth Perry in Harvard. And that's we share the common observation. And I also should make clear, I'm not communist member. So I speak from my own observation, nothing to do with the Chinese government.
I like your answer a lot. I think a lot of economics, when they are talking about developmental state, they talk from economic perspective only. I think yours include a lot of about national security and geopolitical thinkings. Hello?
Yeah, this really is very simple because I studied history of science. Then I find out the history of science is actually a history of military science, you know. And before Industrial Revolution, science was amateur science, mainly conducted in university and private, rich people, right? But after Napoleon, every country invested their national budget in science because they realized the national power depends on science. So Napoleon is the first leader to understand the science that makes the national defense, national science education as a cornerstone. So that's why I criticize Adam Smith's so-called invisible hand is just a utopia. You know, all the history of colonialism, imperialism is a science of a visible hand. Okay, British power is not created by businessmen; it's created by British Navy. You have to understand it. And once you lost the battle in Navy, like Dutch or Spain, they lost the power. So British and American and they rise up because they heavily invest in defense technology. And defense technology is closely cooperated with the financial power. If any financial power without the background of the military power, they're gone. So that's why British financial power is gone. They have to cooperate with Shanghai, not with Hong Kong. That's very simple. If British government want to still do business, I would say if they choose the side, they will choose Shanghai, not Chicago, because Shanghai market is much larger than Chicago.
Great. Did anyone else have, thank you so much for sharing that. Did anyone else have any more questions? I'm looking to see if we have any hands. Liam, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Chen. So I guess my question would be, I kind of had a similar question to Faye, so I'll ask a different question. How do kind of low frequency, high consequence events like coronavirus affect like your understanding of economic chaos and complexity?
Oh, this is an interesting question. Actually, from mathematical perspective, may I know your background? You have mathematical background?
I'm in the Cockrell School of Engineering, so not quite your level, but a little bit.
we have a common interest. Before I doing economic chaos, you know what I'm doing? I'm doing social psychology. Because for social psychology, people study the issue of information diffusion. Is the same model like disease diffusion. Same model. Okay. So at the very beginning, I know Chinese government is right, because for the disease diffusion, because you have a limited population size, right? So your diffusion speed depends on the population size of the healthy people and infected people. If you say you have less and less healthy people, so you have less and less room to spread your disease, right? So your speed will go down. In this case, China made the right decision. You have to limit the population size, then you can control the disease spreading speed. But the Western society, especially British and Swedish, they have a wrong idea. They say, oh, human right is freedom is important. Let people make choice. They have some economic sense. Why? Because you minimize government duty. So you minimize your budget burden, right? So you can easily shift your burden to the procedure. Say the parliament did not authorize new budgets, so I can do nothing, right? So it's not my fault. So if you live in Britain, I would say prime minister has much less pressure than the Hubei governor of Wuhan major. Their pressure is much higher. If they cannot make a quick decision, you out. You lost your position. Okay. So in that way, you can see New York governor. He's a tough guy. Can make a decision. Then people immediately, trust him. That's leadership there. Okay. Procedure cannot automatically give you the justice for your authority. People will seek your leadership. So that's my point. So in this way, I would say right now, actually, University of Texas did a very good job, because I love UT, because I think UT is more competitive than, say, Harvard or MIT or Chicago. Why? Because chaos theory is developing Austin first. And MIT and Harvard are very conservative. Okay, I have some friends, let's say in Stanford, in Berkeley, but not in East Coast. East Coast, they are far behind. So in this way, I would say, in this COVID virus, West Coast, that's the University of Washington and the University of Texas, do much better job than, say, Johns Hopkins. because they are too close to Washington, D.C., so they have a constraint. They cannot say what they want to say, and we can say anything in Texas. Right? We have more freedom than in D.C. And in New York. I was a foreign member of the Columbia Center of the Capitalism and Society. And they have a lot of big names there. Nobel laureates, former advisor to presidents, to Republican or Democrats. But I think in Texas, we have more speech, freedom of speech. So you are a very good question. Actually, we can use the big data and to develop a more sophisticated model. And next, because Texas, in recent history, we have 3 presidents came from Texas, not from the East Coast, right? I hope next president, if from Texas or West Coast, they will more easily solve the trade war than the people from Middle West or East Coast.
Well, I do have another question about the future of China's development. I mean, some people will say that as the coronavirus and trade war hits China, China will become more state-dominated economy. Others say that China will go for a more liberalization. What do you think of the future directions of China's development model, and in what area China will have more state influence, and in what area there will be more liberalization?
I observe a pattern. Okay, China's domestic policy is not independently determined by domestic issues. Okay, if the international environments, geopolitics is relatively peaceful, China will be more open, more business-oriented, and you can say more liberal. However, if international situation become unstable, and China will have strong sense of a crisis, then China will back to the more centralized model. And in Mao's terminology, it's called people's war. Okay, you have to prepare for the war. And prepare for the war, it's started from Cao Cao. You know Cao Cao, Tun Tian. Okay. So China's soldier is soldiers and farmers. So they are self-sustained. You know, they don't count on, you know, government budgets to survive. So in peaceful times, they are farmers. In war times, they are soldiers. That's a difference between China's military defense with the British or American Navy. British or American Navy completely count on government budgets. If government have no funding, your Navy is collapsed because Navy is more expensive than Army. You understand this?
Yeah, sure.
So that's why I will say President Trump is right only in one sense. American right now cannot afford to be world police because it's too expensive. Okay, so Trump, I think, launched a fake war, actually pretty much like President Nixon. Nixon wanted to withdraw from Vietnam, but he had to be pretended to be, I'm a strong man, I have courage to fight, then fight. After fight is a negotiation. Let me withdraw, you know, and keep my face. That's a Nixon strategy. I would say no matter Trump or Biden claim they are tough, but after this virus, they have to sit down to negotiate with the big 3 or big 5 because American is not affordable to maintain a global power without budgets. That's impossible.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen.
Okay, we can close.
Yeah, we can close. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.